So in this segment, we're going to be talking about a topic that I find really frustrating. That Labour have kind of pulled back on, raising taxes and changing tax policy if they're elected to power. Now, they can't argue that they can't do this stuff because of borrowing and some other nonsense. I did see them argue, well, we've got the highest tax burden for 50 years or whatever, and it's like the highest tax burden on who though? It's lower and middle earners. So I found this very aggravating. So Rachel Reeves has ruled out any version of a wealth tax on the richest in society should Labour win the next general election. She told the Sunday Telegraph extra money for public services would have to come from economic growth, and if you're not going to borrow money and you're not going to tax more, how are you going to get economic growth? Because you can argue Labour will manage the money better. Yeah, no doubt. But there are limits on how well you can manage the money. You will still need more money to come in. And unless you're looking at really ridiculous growth statistics, you're not going to do great. And so for Labour to do this is so stupid. Genuinely. I just don't know what they're playing at here. Maybe this is, tactical reasoning, because, Corbyn was talking about raising taxes on the top 5% of earners, and that's people over 80k. And people seem to get really upset about that because they didn't realise what the top 5% of earners is. But, if Labour were worried about it, they could say, oh, we're going to raise tax on anyone making over 150,000 or whatever. But I think the most criminal one is the fact that they're not reforming capital gains tax. That's the one where it's just awful that you can make more money via stocks and shares or just investments than if you work a 9 to 5. You pay less in tax if you just make money through shares. And when you look at poverty, this from Adil Ray ITV, there's absolute proof to say that if you rely on food banks, you're likely to do worse at GCSE. So you're already at disadvantage if you're poorer, like a huge disadvantage. Starmer saying he wouldn't be able to go to university if he'd been 18 now during this cost of living crisis. So, the question is, why is he not doing anything to resolve the cost of living crisis, or what are kind of his policies to help with that? Because, chances are there will be an election probably next year, and Labour are going to have to come in with a bang. They keep saying, oh, we're going to be really busy. Busy doing what? Because you haven't really talked about what you're going to do in terms of policies. Rachel Reeves on the 2-child benefit cap.
Would lift 250,000 children out of poverty.
No,
according to the Child Poverty Action Group.
I do understand
it would
that.
also lessen the poverty for around 850,000 other children, which would ease the pressure on those families. It sounds like a lot, but actually in a budget, a government budget, 1.3 billion is a drop in the ocean, frankly. It is something you could so easily promise.
Well, it's really important that everything that we put forward is fully costed.
And this is 1.3 billion, which isn't a lot for the government. They could get that, I think, through just changing capital gains tax and a couple other tweaks. They could get, a lot of children out of poverty by doing this, and it will help the country out because, as we've just established, that if you are reliant on food banks, you are likely to do worse at your GCSEs. So, Labour would be helping a generation of kids there. And I hope, those kids will grow up and not forget that it was Labour that helped them out. But, evidently that's not going to happen. When we look at, things like the Tories have done here and what Labour are going to have to fix, you can see here Adil Ray learning about per capita and per pupil, showing that the Tories have spent less per pupil than 2010. Obviously, this in real terms, so it would count things like inflation. So the IFS have said, Labour in 2010 was spending £7,260 per pupil. Now, under the Tories, it's £6,640 per pupil. It's just astonishing that, kids are suffering so much under this government, under the Tories. We've got a couple more things to talk about. Rachel Reeves talking about the changing capital gains tax, really.
Taxation. If you go out to work and you're paying income tax and national insurance, you're paying more tax than if you make an income from speculating on the stock market, or if you're getting income from a portfolio of buy-to-let properties.
So, they obviously know this is a problem. They have spoken about it at length. And, as Grace Blakely points out, austerity has been discredited. It doesn't work economically. We know this to be true. The economy is not like a household budget. It's not how it works. We've seen massive profiteering from these companies. But, as she kind of points out, Labour is capital's B team. And austerity and these things are absolutely political choices that they've chosen not to make. This is more from Rachel Reeves.
How can it possibly be right that the police constable on £27,000 a year should be taxed at 32 pence in the pound, but someone making many times more from buying and selling stocks and shares should pay just 20 pence in the pound. That will not stand under Labour.
Whoa, that's crazy. Someone should tell this lady what Rachel Reeves is doing now. What do you mean this is Rachel Reeves? What? Nah, it can't be right, can it? Politicians being hypocritical liars. What? Scrapping the two-child benefit would lift 250,000 kids out of poverty. Abolishing tuition fees will cost around 9 billion. All right, fair enough. The tuition fees one, whatever. Okay, whatever. But not scrapping the two-child benefit cap is honestly abhorrent. It's absolutely abhorrent. And if you want to back austerity party, then go for it. But it's gonna be very difficult for me to do that. You can see here: no wealth tax, no tax on high-value properties, no increase to the top rate of income tax, no capital gains tax hike. Why would I want to vote for George Osborne? I don't get it. I don't get it. The people are saying we need to vote Labour no matter what. Like, we have to put as much pressure on them now because they're coming up with crappy policies and things that will not change much at all. This will go back to 2010's austerity, but it'll be worse because of Brexit. Genuinely, why would I want to vote for Team Red austerity? It doesn't make any sense. This from Keir Starmer's pledges, economic justice. This is his first pledge that he made. I know someone talked about 2 pledges and 10 promises and whatever, but increasing income tax for the top 5% of earners, reverse the Tories' cut in corporation tax, and clamp down on tax avoidance, particularly of large corporations. No stepping back from our core principles. Well, they've stepped back dramatically. And so any argument they make against increasing taxes is absolute nonsense. 100% is nonsense. What Labour should be pushing for is multiple windfall taxes on the banks and the supermarkets. That's what they should be looking at here. But these guys are absolute frauds. 100% of these people are frauds. They do not know what they're doing. The levels of economic illiteracy are astounding. This from Marina Perkis, who I know a lot of people like, but this is probably one of the most embarrassing tweets I've seen from someone who covers politics. Saying, quote, I once had a friend who wouldn't let the guy she was dating see her without makeup in case he went off her. She finally did when they were official. And that's what I'm hoping Labour's strategy is. End quote. And this is genuinely one of the dumbest tweets I've ever seen from anyone in politics. They are who they say they are. What do you think is going to change? Do you think he's going to raise capital gains tax? Well, genuinely, my genuine question to her is, if I could actually speak to her, would be, what do you think Labour are going to do so differently when they come to power? And kind of as No Justice points out, Magic Beans, and she posted the meme about the wallet inspector from Simpsons, which is quite funny. Rachel Reeves' policies are so stupid that she's getting credit from Chuck Grassley, who's a massive right-wing Republican, saying Senate Dems wake up and take cue of the British Labour Party. Imagine being so kind of right-wing on economic policy that Chuck Grassley, a Reaganite, is saying, this is where we need to be. He says, read the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer Reeves' interview in The Telegraph. No tax increases, no wealth tax. She is for wealth creation. She feels you don't tax your way out of an economic problem. You grow your way out. And this is very much reminding me of Liz Truss, when Liz Truss said, you grow the pie. This is not that different, apart from it's just packaged slightly better. Genuinely. But it's just astonishing. How are you going to grow the economy without further borrowing or without further taxation? Where are you going to get the money from? Especially in the context of, the schools crumbling at this point, which we'll talk about in a separate video. How are you going to fix these fundamental problems? You have a situation where kids could get killed by collapsing roofs in this country. How are you going to fix that? How are you going to grow the economy enough to fix those problems? And the other problem is that, you run into voters like this dude who says, he'd vote Boris Johnson, who partied during COVID. He'd vote for Liz Truss, who crashed the markets, because he thinks Labour MPs are a bunch of communists. And my fear is Labour are going to push so aggressively to pander to these people who think that Labour are communists. They're still not going to vote for them. These people will vote for Reform for the most part, or they'll vote Tory again. Genuinely, imagine calling Keir Starmer a communist. I just despair. It's just crazy. But yeah, fundamental issues with Labour. I've only seen one other person cover it, which is just astonishing to me, that these people who claim they're massive Labour fans, surely they should be talking about how these are great policies. No, talking about how Rachel Reeves has played another blinder by not increasing corporation taxes and capital gains tax and other things. Why have they not covered this? I'm surprised. They cover, minute details about the Tories, but when Labour do something stupid, they won't cover it. I just don't get it. I do not get what she's playing at here. No wealth tax, fine, whatever. No tax on high-value properties. We still have things like stamp duty when you sell houses, but okay. No increase to the top rate of income tax is astonishing to me, especially when she said there's a screenshot here somewhere. She added, I don't have any spending plans that require us to raise £12 billion worth of money, so I don't need a wealth tax or any of those things. We don't have plans for a wealth tax. We don't have any plans to increase taxes outside of what we've said. I don't see the way to prosperity being through taxation. I want to grow the economy. £1.3 billion to lift 250,000 children out of poverty. You're telling me that she cannot increase taxes just to do that, and taxes on the rich, these are, achievable things. 1.3 billion to get 250,000 kids out of poverty. This is the Labour Party. This is what the Labour Party is meant to be about, especially helping people that are disadvantaged. I don't recognise these people anymore, and I grow more and more frustrated by people saying, we need to just get the Tories out, vote red no matter what. I can't. I'm sorry. It's gonna take a monster effort to convince me in the seat I live in to vote Labour, genuinely. And before anyone says you're going to let the Tories win, like I said, I'm not voting for Neo George Osborne. I'm not going to do it. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can. And I guess vote red no matter what, right? And I'll catch you in the next one.